चाओ चाओ दोस्तों, वेलकम बैक टू अनदर स्पेशल वीडियो। आज हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं कौस्तुभ पांडे, एडिटर इन चीफ ऑफ गेट इटालियन फुटबॉल न्यूज एंड लॉयल एंड ardent मैन यूनाइटेड फैन. We are speaking, after the derby, the Manchester derby, where you saw City coming up with a 3-0 result. सबसे पहले कौस्तुभ, how are you feeling? How was the game, and what were your emotions after the game immediately?
I felt empty in a way. Well, it's not new. आजकल यही सब होता है.
हम
But it
लोगों
was
की
like
आदत सी है मुझको ऐसे
the
जीने.
precisely. I mean, the weird part of it was that City never really got out of third gear, and to still lose 3-0 to them while, how do I say it, while constantly having the same issues throughout the game, that can't be allowed. I mean, you could make a case for a loss like this if, say, the manager uh, understands what went wrong during certain phases of play and then adapts to it, and fir bhi it's not working. I'll get that. In a case like that, you can clearly see that the opposition is far superior. But in this case, you could see the issues, nothing happened, and it kept going on. And we've seen that a lot of times, especially in the Europa League final. I always go
Right.
back to that game because we could see the direction in which the game was going. And a very apna calcio comparison is Vincenzo Italiano's Fiorentina playing those two Conference League finals.
Conference
You
finals.
could
Yep.
see the pattern of the game, even as a fan. You could see what's going wrong. You could see what the opposition is trying to do. Despite that, you're not making any changes to bring about a difference. And that's exactly what's happened. And that is probably the most frustrating part, which will cost Amarin. Could be weeks, could be days, could be I don't know months. Months to nahi hoga. Would probably be weeks from now. But it's very annoying because I always feel like United are a club who are more suited to a manager who's more pragmatic than aesthetic,
Yep.
or
Yep.
entrenched in his own ways. Which is why even someone like Eric Ten Hag actually adapted to the situation at hand in his first 2 weeks in the Premier League. Ole always adapted. Louis Van Gaal actually adapted. Started playing a back three, which
Yep.
is back three, back four. He would constantly shift between those. Mourinho adapted. I'm not seeing anything of that kind from Amorim at a incredibly political club.
Absolutely.
I
And I
mean,
mean, हाँ बोल
हाँ,
बोल
go
बोल.
on, go on, आगे बोलते हैं.
I mean, I just wanted you to throw some light because you said incredibly political club. I know कि foundation से ही there are issues like be top management, the staff, and of course वो trickle down होता है to the technical team, which is which are the coaches, the manager, and the players. So what have you made of the small sample size of United games this season? Obviously, that Grimsby Town wala loss is right up there, like a very glaring mark. But itna optimism tha, right? With the summer arrivals of Cunha, Benjamin Sheshko, and Brian Mbumo. So itna optimism tha, and we are just like what 3-4 game weeks, and it already seems like it's the same old story all over again. I mean, isn't that too soon?
It's never too soon at United, I feel, because I mean, as I mentioned, it's such a political club where every 3 days you've got a crisis brewing which needs to be silenced. And within that, you really can't stick to just one way to an extent. I mean, unless you're Sir Alex Ferguson or someone who's got that lofty name tag of, say, someone like Zidane at Real Madrid, you can't just be sticking to just one approach all the time. It's a club which requires you to not just protect yourself, but protect a lot of things while considering a lot of external factors. Uh, Amorim's mentioned after the loss yesterday that a lot of things have gone on which we don't know of. I mean, obviously, we don't know what that is, but if he's pointing towards the fact that, oh, I wanted a midfielder. I didn't get it. I didn't get one. I didn't get Baleba or whoever he really wanted, or Morten Hulman, who we've seen at Lecce, now at Sporting.
Yeah.
Uh, Whoever it was, or say maybe he wanted someone like Gyökeres instead of Sesko. Whatever it was, it wouldn't have made a drastic change to how things are because it's not about profiles. It's about how you're setting up your team on a weekly basis.
Hmm.
And it's not like United fans are not used to this. जब Eric Ten Hag का last full season था, United fans were equally frustrated because they would play the same way in every game despite knowing कि problem क्या है.
Right.
And that is delusion. I mean,
Yeah.
you're using a knife as a fork and expecting to eat food in the same way. You can't, and that's madness. It's and at a club like United, it gets more tricky because if you are at a much more stable club and you're having these issues, you can like still somehow come up with ways to tide over the problems temporarily. Say,
Yeah.
uh, could be say if Amorim ended up at Liverpool, and the reason why Liverpool rejected Amorim was because of his inflexibility. Uh,
Right.
if he went there, he's got the profile of players who are much better than United.
Hmm.
And when you look at United, United squad profiling is wonky,
Hmm.
especially the midfield part. I mean, you mentioned Ki there was optimism. Honestly, I was never optimistic because there was no midfield signing,
Hmm.
and that's a fundamental problem that United have been ignoring for the last 7 8 years. There was a point under Ole when Fred McTominay would play every game.
Yeah.
Poor Paul Pogba somehow had to be played deeper when Ole hated that idea. That's why he often used him as a left winger
Yeah.
or an attacking midfielder. United had just those two options, or Nemanja Matic, who was obviously not as good a player as he used to be in 2014-15.
Right.
This has been a problem which has been ignored. And the reason why Ole's own downfall came about was due to a lack of midfield signing and signing a centre forward who was Cristiano Ronaldo. And you're seeing similar patterns now. So it's almost like the club is stuck in a loop of not learning lessons. And
Hmm.
it's obviously down to Amorim. I mean, I do sympathize with him to an extent, but
Right.
if it's like saying that, oh, I've got this trauma, fair enough. What do you do now? Do you react to it or you just stay where you are? If you seek therapy, you do things that help you. I mean,
Yeah.
you get the point. If you've
Of
got,
course.
अगर आपको, if you if you took a bump while playing football, you don't sit there carrying that injury everywhere.
Yeah.
You do something to make sure that you're better. I see none of that, and again, it's delusional. At least the previous few managers adapted, and I guess yesterday I was just thinking of this point in Ole's era, and I constantly keep going back to the Ole era because he adapted in every single game. एक point था when United was struggling to get goals or get wins. Uh, Ole thought, let's chop and change. Guess what he did against Tottenham? He played a 3-5-2 setup with Cavani and Ronaldo up front. And that's not a another sort of solution you would expect a manager of a lofty club to make. You won't
Yeah.
expect Pep Guardiola to make that 3-5-2 change overnight. Pep did that and United got the result as well. You remember that Ronaldo famous goal from a tight angle. It
Yeah.
was from that game, and Nuno got sacked some days after that result.
Yeah.
So Ole constantly adapted, and he knew when the alarm bells were ringing. He obviously knew that things are not going right. We've not made the right signings. They obviously needed a midfielder. The right wing solution was still not found post time pay. He just went on with it. He somehow just adapted. I know he got sacked 5, 6, 7 weeks down the line, but at least that result helped him stay afloat for longer. And that's just basic human tendency. That's how normal humans operate. And that's my biggest problem with the situation right now that you're not operating like a normal human being. And
Yeah.
it's, as I mentioned, uh, I don't know, it's baffling.
कौस्तुभ कल के गेम की तरफ आते हैं एंड मैं तो काफी आई आई विजुअली वॉच द गेम एंड ट्राई टू मेक सम नोट्स बैक टू माय ओल्ड कोचिंग डेज जब आई हैज टू बी फुल टाइम इनटू कोचिंग तो यार द वन थिंग दैट काइंड ऑफ लाइक really bogged me is if you can see the screen and we discussed this off screen. So this is Benjamin Sheshko, right? And just look at his heat map costume. Not a single touch in City's box. And uh, I don't see any, like, I see okay, he's over here on the right hand side, but it's not even in that final third where Sheshko should be and should be getting that service. And, like, okay, if I just look at Mbuemo, who probably was the most attack minded player, and you can see
Yeah.
Mbuemo also again, like, half space pe hai, but there is nothing inside the box, and that has to be a worrying thing, right?
It it's actually weird because Hoyland used to face the same issues. I mean, any striker who plays in that setup will face the same issues. And if you go back to Hoyland's debut goal against Fiorentina,
Yeah,
it was so similar to the goal that Haaland scored. You know, that
yeah,
beating that wide centre back, run into
right,
that space, have that tight finish into the bottom corner.
right,
And Hoyland got service in that game. He
yeah,
knew that there is space in behind. There was a plan that we exploit that. And
yeah,
and we know how Fiorentina play. Fiorentina have been playing a high line. Under Pioli change हुआ है, but
yes,
he's trying to make sure कि थोड़ा similar रहेगा. But it's just basic problem solving. And at United, when Hoyland was around, there was such a lack of final ball from either side. And more than the final ball, you could see that he's not being supported enough.
yeah,
Uh, Abhi, in that Hoyland debut against Fiorentina, you could see that Hoyland has had as many as three players right next to him. One was McTominay, one was De Bruyne, one was probably Politano coming inside.
yeah,
He had so much support around him
yeah.
to link up and then make
Even
that run.
even Spinazzola, who actually gave him the assist.
Huh. And Spinozzola was constantly coming inside as well because he's a
Yeah,
right footer on at
yeah,
left back or left wing back. So you could see that he's getting so much support to not just, it's again a human thing to know that this man's been struggling at a chaos club. Let's just make things work for him. And after the goal, Hoyland obviously somewhat thanked Conte. He celebrated a bit with Conte after
yeah,
scoring as well. यहाँ पे it feels like it's if and again last season there was this tendency for Bruno, and this was obviously an instruction because this happened in every game as Bruno was constantly coming deeper even when he was at 10,
yeah,
and you're just leaving your center forward to starve off long balls when we know that Holland is more of a player who receives it on his chest, links up with those around him. He's not your Didier Drogba. He's not your
yeah,
Lorenzo Luca, as Napoli have it these
yeah,
days. And that's and again, Shesko abhi आपने mention करा कि Shesko wasn't even in the box when one thing that he does really really well is get at the end of those crosses or
yeah,
those final balls. So it's almost like you're trying to fit square pegs and round holes where
yeah,
and again there is obviously the problem ki Seshko is very new to the setup and it was his first start in the
yeah,
Premier League. And it's not like he doesn't like dropping deep. He's someone who links up pretty well, and he linked up pretty well in the game as well. He had a
yeah,
decent game, I thought, barring the lack of service and everything. He linked up with those around him. He knew exactly how to do that part. Uh, but again, you don't really see enough runners around him. That if Shesko is dropping deeper, who's making that run beyond him?
yeah, yeah,
Which is again a footballing basic where uh, if your center forward center forwards leaving space, who's that? man on the other side who can exploit that space, which Rashford used to do pretty well. And obviously, we know what happened there with the club. I think it was with the club, not with Amorim, but it's been uh, portrayed as an Amorim problem. I don't think it was, but I think it's it's like if again if Shesko is dropping deeper, there has to be a solution to uh, make sure that the attack clicks from the other side. But I don't see that happening. I know Dorgu got a fair bit of criticism, but you're essentially out. You're leaving him abandoned as well. You
Yeah,
don't really see Dorgu with any sort of support in the half space. Right side
yeah,
pe tha because we saw Kuni operate in those areas, and he's been operating there pretty well. That was the goal. As soon as he joined in pre-season against Everton, that's the role he was playing with Ahmad uh,
yeah,
down that side also. So I feel like the idea, and Amorim spoke of this setup before the game, saying that the reason why Ahmad was playing on the left attacking midfield spot was because of in behind running. And I found that pretty weird because Ahmad's not an in behind runner. He's more of a the ball's glued to his feet and he makes things happen. He's not your runner. Again, and
100%.
we saw that if Ahmad's your off the ball runner, that's the touch map you're gonna get with Chesko
Yeah,
in a nutshell. If this was someone like Rashford or even someone like Garnacho, and I'm not trying to do any revisionism, I'm just coming up with random names, or let's just say someone like Dan and Doy,
yeah,
who did that role pretty well at Bologna, that
yeah,
off the ball running, exploiting
yeah,
spaces. You get a player of that profile on that side. And again, I get it. Cunha, Mount had injury problems, they would have done that role well. But it all of it is related to how Kobe Mino and Bruno Fernandes are used. I mean, Bruno can do that job, Mino can do that job, but one's fairly deeper, one's on the bench coming on in the 75th minute. So again, it's a profile problem. It's a system problem. Uh, Abhi, if you bring up that touch map once again, it's like the average positions wala thing as
yeah,
well. Uh, Dorgu is pretty isolated in that role as well. Uh,
yeah,
even if he even if people are sort of expecting him to make sure that someone's getting at the end of his crosses, that's only going to happen once in 10 times. The if and you compare that to the way City play, none of
yeah,
the players are isolated. You see those
yeah,
triangles,
yeah,
and
yeah,
number 45 with number 3, number 11 and 47.
yeah,
And if you're a manager who believes in positional play like Amorim obviously does,
yeah,
having your players isolated, it's a crime. And I get it. The number 3, number 23, sorry, in that shape, Luke Shaw,
yeah,
uh, is behind him, but you're just asking him too much to make that underlap and then drop deeper
yeah,
as well. Against City, who were occupying the final third well off the ball as well.
yeah,
So again, it's a system problem about leaving your players isolated.
yeah.
It doesn't get simpler than that, I guess.
Yeah, Jeremy Doku ka, this is a very questionable heat map, but I'm not, I'm getting there. He was on fire, and that kind of symbolizes what he did on the football pitch last night. But Kaustubh, before I जो मेन मुद्दे की बात है वो अपन उसे एंड करेंगे. आई ऑल्सो वांटेड योर रिएक्शन ऑन प्रेम टार्ड ओपिनियन ऑफ द वीक. एंड ये हम लोग कैल्चो चर्चा में चर्चा करेंगे. बट this is what you had mentioned. This is obviously after Hoyland scored that goal for Napoli. I mean, just look at this. Premier League is the problem. No defender, even from relegated clubs, would allow him to turn the way he did there. Every weakness as a striker or player will get exposed here because of superior competitors and better managers. Serie A made Lukaku look like Pele. Graziano Pele, okay.
I mean, the way I describe this is Man United fans ka copium, where they refuse to blame all the problems on the chaos of the club and the dysfunctionality of the club, and उसके अलावा बाकी सबको blame करना है. You victimize players, you
Yeah.
victimize other leagues,
I
and
mean,
this
this
isn't
is
new as well.
ridiculous.
When Pogba was struggling in a two-man midfield,
Yeah.
Fans literally blamed Serie A, saying that, oh, it's a slower league,
Yeah.
and maybe things won't work out for him in the Premier League because he's a Serie A player, very conveniently. Whereas when Ole had that setup where Pogba was constantly that inside forward left wing se aake in
Yeah.
a 4-4-2 diamond, that worked pretty well. At that point, they just forgot about all their points.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're talking about the last defender was a joke. I'm not saying Lenny Oro was bad, but
Yeah.
last season I'm not sure too many remember or not where Kamaldeen Sulemana destroyed the United back line and Euro got exposed exactly like Pongracic against Holland or worse.
Yeah.
And Sulemana is now at Atalanta
Atlanta.
and
Yeah.
he's
And
struggling to break into the team.
yeah, and Pogracic is really, I mean, not the yardstick to measure
Exactly.
defending. So
I'm
like
not sure how he starts for the club.
yeah, yeah,
Not,
yeah,
probably because of his 7 out of 10 ball playing ability, but he's
yeah,
someone mentioned that he's a Bundesliga defender.
yeah,
And that's not a disrespectful thing to say because वो Bundesliga में खेलता था. But
yeah,
he's I mean he can't really he's not even a Bundesliga defender. To be honest, please respect the Bundesliga as well.
yeah,
Because
of
at
course,
least a lot of Bundesliga players hold their defensive line high very, very well.
very well,
उसको नहीं
very well.
आता वो.
Yeah, I mean,
Took one
look
pass
at the
for
point.
Hoyland to just beat him.
Look at the points here, Kaustubh. Think now there is some Amit who has chimed in and like PL club should not be ridiculed. Talking about the Lukaku, McTominay doing. Look at Chiesa. PL is a different beast. Hoyland will score 20 goals now and become 100. उसने 9 गोल तो मारा सेरिया में और वो 70 मिलियन का हुआ. तो 20 गोल में तो 100 मिलियन तो हो जाएगा वो.
And Hoyland was actually decent in his first season. ये लोग, this is revisionism of a different kind. He was just carrying
Yeah,
United in the Champions League.
since ये सरिया के बारे में था तो I thought let me share it with you and kind of like take but this I mean ये जो opinions रहता like you mentioned it's just copium like okay I will ignore the shortcomings within my club. I'll not accept it, live in denial, but yeah, let's blame the league. And ये तो हम लोग तो कोशिश करते हैं the myth busting करने नहीं भाई सरिया there is nothing like a slow league, by the way. Like that there are teams who play in different ways. Some teams like to keep the ball and build up from the back. मतलब यार अब मैं क्या इसमें technicalities में जाऊँ
And
मेरे को सिर्फ
it's like a very in-depth discussion that I would love to have some point later.
yeah
That no league is inferior, and the reason for that is so much of how players or teams of a particular country plays associated with their culture, not sporting culture, their societal culture in general, and
yeah
how they behave, how they are as people, and how they've reacted to how their country has evolved. So to make fun of that is just making fun of that country's culture in a very upper say superficial way.
yeah
And it's like, and people take offense when we say that, oh, Indian football is this is a certain type. That's when people take offense. Ha. And whereas the truth is, it's just trauma response
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल
to something. It's just a cultural reaction to something. It's like a discussion which is worth having
yeah
आगे जाके, where
आगे जाके
we
तो
just go
और
in depth. I know the content creator scene in football in India is very superficial these days. We had that discussion
yeah
also. So
yeah yeah
it's time for that discussion where we relate that cultural identity of a country to how they play on the football pitch, how their
yeah
clubs play as well, how they evolve. If the Premier League has evolved as an entity, how is that? How did that happen? How is that
yeah
related to their politics? How is it related to their the end of hooliganism culture
hmm,
in England? Italy, mein, it's a completely different scene. If Italy had enough money, Italian football had enough money. If it eliminated its evils and decided
yeah
to market it, modernize it, the conversation will be different. Again, comes down to mentality and then to culture. So
Yeah,
that's a conversation people on Twitter or X can't really have. वो
fair,
करना पड़ेगा.
fair. Kaustubh, yeah, just to end this particular video, the last topic is the question in everyone's mind, and this can happen either way. Like Amorim can leave, or United can fire him. At the top of the video, you mentioned कि भाई it could be not months, it could just be weeks now. You know, it's a ticking time bomb जो चल रहा है. But क्या लगता है? I mean, just from not as a fan perspective, someone who sees things in a different way. Do you think the way that Amorim has been so rigid, and अपने ये off air भी discuss किया, like he is more of a hipster, old school Italian
Dan
manager,
Mazzari.
right? Like Mazzari hai, Yakini hai, Ventura hai,
Hmm.
which is a hipster version. Like itna rigid. Like even Spalletti, like we discussed Spalletti as well. Even he's very rigid. He's got his own, with
Does RB for that matter.
Deserve भी as well. Idiosyncrasies है दोनों का. But you still see them a little more flexible. थोड़ा adapt करते हैं उन लोग, ऐसा नहीं करते हैं. Especially when your team is not getting those results. So क्या लगता है? Do you think Amorim should, take that thing and like be the bigger man and leave the club, or do you think it'll be a same old story where United sack a manager in the middle of a project and then it, पूरा restart हो जाता है from like ground zero?
I feel like this is something that a lot of fans should understand that there is a difference between system and there's a difference between your system and your formation.
Yeah,
Both are completely different ways. And you as a coach, former coach, आपको पता है कि these are like things that are fairly different but still connected to each other. So it's like we're not expecting Amorim to change the way he plays. We're asking him to change the setup. You can still come up with innovative ideas to put your ideas on the table and work with them with a say a 3-5-2. Apna classical,
yeah,
my favorite formation. You can like work with that while keeping your fundamental principles about the game same, which is what Pep Guardiola does also. Or, sometimes Paletti has as well, where, the way he adapted to the Totti ka
yeah. False nine.
decline and then change the entire setup to make sure that it works on somehow works for the team, and it worked well, revolutionized how Roma play.
Yeah,
It's while keeping the fundamentals of the setup same, just playing to the strengths of one or two players. And it should be a realization which should have come to Amorim weeks ago. The fact that it's not come yet, it's pretty dangerous. And he's going out on a limb in a press conference saying that I won't change. That approach can help you at a club with a perfect setup like Manchester City, but not at Man United. It's dysfunctional. Where if you don't change, you're gone. Or I mean, it's one way or the other. You've got to adapt. And some weeks ago, there was this narrative from United fans that Amorim won't change. Amorim should not change because he's not Eric Ten Hag. Okay, fair enough. Don't change. You lose the job. Ten Hag changed after 2 weeks. He lost. We lost to Brighton and Brentford. He dropped Ronaldo. Said, "I'm doing my own thing, adapting to Marcus Rashford, then Scott McTominay, then Wout Weghorst." Uh, Made things work. Won the trophy. Got us to Champions League. Obviously, got sacked because after that he couldn't really know how to change. How to because he was in a no man's land because उसने एक बार change करा he had never used that setup at any other club. So
hmm,
you're expecting him to go into another no man's land once again, and that's where things fell apart. But at least he had this realization कि 2 हफ्ते में things won't work for me here. I'm going a different route now.
yeah, yeah,
And the way Amorim speaking in press conference is not done at all. I mean, I don't want managers sacked at all, especially Man United managers, where it's a graveyard for anyone who comes to the club. Obviously, Amorim will leave with a fat paycheck, but he would leave with his identity and a lot of his ways villainized. and I don't like that. I like managers who are hell bent on their own ways,
Yeah,
but again, you've got to make one or two changes, or you're not lasting in this game at all. And that's the direction in which Amorim is going. Where, and you consider the next few games that United have. Honestly, I don't think he's lasting till December,
mm,
and he's obviously going to be sad. And he, from a financial perspective, won't mind that. Um, but from a philosophical perspective, again, it's a club of United stature where you'll get memed on social media. Eric Ten Hag knows that. Bayer
yeah,
Leverkusen took advantage of that identity as well.
yeah,
Whereas it's Leverkusen's fault. It wasn't Ten Hag's fault. It's Leverkusen's fault that they hired a manager without really backing him and expecting him to just be Harry Potter, as I think Ten Hag also mentioned in his press
yeah,
conferences. You will reach a point where you will become a meme. And for that sake, Amorim needs to just win two games. And
yeah,
that's my humble request. Just win games. That's what all this is about. It's not even about, winning the Premier League. Just win two games, or I don't know, win 5 games. Let that man who's not cut his hair be a bit hygienic. Just think of winning games. You can play the 3-4-2-1 or 3-4-1-2, 3-4-3, 5 games down the line. I don't mind that at all. I use the 3-4-2 setup so many times. Every time I play Football Manager, जो भी save है, I use the 3-4-2-1. I'm a fan of that shape, but it's not about the shape. It's about the man who's not changing. So,
yeah,
considering the next few games, I feel like he's gone before December starts. There's no saving him, and it will be sad because it's a man who again he thinks a lot. You can see that he's not someone who's very throwaway in his approaches of making comments. You can see that he's a thinker. Even when that Grimsby penalty shootout defeat during that game, I was sympathizing with him because people were laughing at the fact that this is a man who's trying to figure things out, and he was
yeah,
focused on the process.
yeah, yeah,
I felt very bad. I never made fun of that part.
yeah,
He This is a man who's trying to figure out what's going wrong because he never really cared about the result in that 90 minutes. He knew the performance in that game was BS,
yeah.
and what the result was inconsequential. And
True.
it was a man desperate to come up with solutions. And I will feel bad for him, but again, just win games. That's my humble request to the man. Win 2 games, and then we'll see how it goes. As Ole did, right? I mentioned that Ole point where he prolonged his shelf life at the club for like 3 or 4 weeks simply by adapting. There was also a game against Newcastle where he threw on three centre forwards. Just go, get me a goal. That's what it is. Just get a goal. Even when you've got 7 minutes to play and you are playing against Chelsea, you are a goal down. Throw strikers on, go long ball. I don't
Yeah,
care. Just get a goal. It's it's that point of his tenure where he just needs to win a game to keep things quiet. I
yeah.
don't think he will, but yeah, that's where we are.
Fair, fair. I think that's a beautiful way to cap off this discussion. Maza hai yaar. We covered culture, we covered calcio, we covered a lot of
Congrats,
yeah, Pogracic as well. Special shout out to him.
catching
Thanks to him.
strays.
Catching space, yeah, exactly. Thanks to him, Hoyland getting off the mark in Serie A, and then of course जो ट्विटर का सब कल्चर है वो एकदम फुल फ्लो में बट मजा है यार एंड with regards to United and as a fan I wish you the very best for the upcoming games like you mentioned tough spell for United. Let's see what happens for this video. That is it. जो जो लोग यहाँ तक देख रहे हैं इस मुकाम तक पहुंचे थैंक यू सो मच फॉर watching as usual. Like, share, subscribe, support, follow Kaustubh on Twitter, subscribe to Calcio Charcha for Italian football. Kaustubh वहां पे भी appearance मारने वाला है. He's slowly making his comeback. into
Remontada.
remontada back into streaming again. But yeah, man, a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this. And both Kaustubh and I will see you guys next time, sometime soon. Until then, it's ciao ciao.
Ciao, ciao.